rock and roll. Yeah, I just thought we would go live. Well, Lauren actually thought we'd go live. This is what happens when we're together and Lauren has a day off from cafe. We like to sit down, get motivated, and we've literally got 3 different devices up at the moment recording. So if we're looking around the joint, you guys know why. But I think Lauren might have wanted to introduce a little bit of what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I just felt super inspired. So this is like a common theme that keeps coming up whenever Sarah and I are together. We get this feeling of like proximity is power. And we not only love hanging out with each other and fortunate enough to have that bond with my beautiful sister and best friend, but whenever we do get that morning together, it's like, okay, coffee and Gary V. And that just, we are 7 minutes, 20 seconds into a Gary V video. And it was like, okay.
We probably listened to about 20 seconds of it.
Exactly. And we tend to get it on and we joke around, but it's like Gary V's message is always the same. He has this consistent theme of like, more content, documenting or whatever it is, and we joke about it, but he's getting his message across, right? Like
definitely. Like when he's consistent, I think that is the thing that we were both chatting about is like, you know, even when you go on there, you're like, I know what he's going to say, I know what he's like going to recommend, I haven't done enough this, haven't done enough that.
More
it's
content.
Like more content. Yes. But then at the same time, it's kind of comforting because you know he's showing you exactly who he is and that he's consistent across the border, across every video that he puts out, every live. He's just being himself. And I think that's something for us that we've wanted to, or that's inspired us to document a lot more of what we do, because it's like we think about like years down the track when, you know, maybe we're in different professions or we're doing different things. We've got pretty big goals, like not only Lauren and I, but like our family as well. And I think it's going to be really cool to look back on this in, you know, a couple of years' time and go, wow, like
I even think
literally the same
months.
people.
Like, because
6 months has been nuts of what we've already achieved and done and how far we've come. But I think it is cool to see the consistency of like, I've always loved this, or I've always done it this way, or, you know, I've always said this particular thing. And that's something that fascinates me or motivates me, I guess, when we think of Gary Vee. It's like, it's always the same. He always has that same message. And that's super cool.
And like allowing yourself to be exactly how you are when you know what you know in this moment. So it's like, I'm not going to put this out until I learn everything. It's like, you're never going to know everything, because the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know. And so it's like, if you start to document, put content out there, it's actually hilarious to watch yourself back, like, oh, look at young me back then thinking they knew what I was speaking about. But somebody at that level is going to resonate. So it's this whole message of like, don't wait to start. And what does actually get you motivated? What pushes you towards action? And I'm not just talking about that like excitable energy of like, yeah, let's go and get stationery and then come home and lose the motivation. But it's like, no, what actually pushes you to take action, and how do you take action? Is it a little prompting video like getting your coffee and watching Gary Vee and then stepping straight into action? Or because Josh and I was saying yesterday on the interview that I did with him, it's like once you miss that window of opportunity, it's so easy to just slip into the rest of the day. And I know particularly for me, it's the morning. If I slip on routine or consistency in the morning, like the rest of my day feels absolutely shot. And
I think morning is probably something across the board for everyone, because once you're at nighttime, there's not much to have like there's not much time left for momentum essentially, unless you're working through the night. But yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that, you know, motivation comes in different forms, whether it's like, you know, having the accountability partners that we have, or whether it's like, I know something that I always talk about is going out in nature or taking a walk. And it's really interesting, even chatting with Tom and you as well, of like the circadian rhythm is like naturally you feel more awake and your body actually kicks into gear when it's outside too. So I know that makes sense for me as to why I start feeling more awake and more alert. Even if I don't feel like doing something, just going outside, like if I'm sick, which I rarely am. I know years and years ago in jobs when I was in offices, when I was more prone to getting sick or feeling a bit more under the weather, just sitting out the front of the house or sitting in the backyard, I'm like, my mood is instantly better. And so it's like, I think for most people, when you're lacking motivation, typically you're not in a great state, right? Like you're not feeling in a place where you're like, your body's typically not up. You're not moving when you're in that motion. You're just sitting down, you're slumped over. Your
body language, it's environment, it's who you're hanging around.
Who you're hanging around.
Feeding yourself, like food-wise, but also content-wise. Like if you're telling yourself, it's a hard day today, or I'm not feeling great. It's like, how do you think your day's going to shape up? Because you're already focusing on what, thanks, Troy.
Thanks, Troy.
You're already focusing on what is not good versus, wow, I've got breath today. How amazing. Like,
or a common one is like, I can't wait to the weekend so then I can actually like do this and this. And it's, I think that's something that from Gary V, I know we're like rambling a lot about him, but he is just kind of what sparked this for us. And I think that's where we got motivated to make this video and go live, is like a lot of people are waiting for, or when I do this or when I have this. It's like, well, how can today be Saturday for you? How can every day be Saturday? Where like, that's even just a cool message on its own. Like, how can every day be the weekend where you wake up and it's like, like Monday is awesome because I get to do this. And even then that's a language choice of I get to do this, not I have to do this. And for us, we're not perfect. Like we still, and I think coming back to what Lauren said before, it's like, if you think you're perfect or you've got it all figured out, then chances are you've probably got a lot to learn, because I think being a forever student or a forever study, like having that curiosity is what makes like you stay motivated and stay passionate about things. If you ever get complacent or like, well, I know all I need to know about that, then it's like, well, I don't know, you're probably going to lose motivation to want to learn in other areas too.
Well, it was like the dude that was on the video of the Gary Vee thing that we're watching as the example. He started doing well at something. And it's like when people start earning money, when they start succeeding, they start achieving all of the things that they want. They enter this level of like complacency and comfort. And it's like, don't let the achievement or that point that you were aiming for be the end, because like Sarah was saying, every master or I guess the people that we aspire to and look at their qualities, they don't get lost in the achievement. They go, wow, like that's cool. I put my mind to it and I got there. But it's like, that's just the beginning of another level. Like, you know, and it's like, now we level up from here. And it's not appreciating it and going, oh, I'm not that good. Like, better keep hustling, better keep grinding. It's like, no, acknowledge it. Like you put in the work, you put in the effort, but it's like, keep going, because the master never sleeps. Like the master never stops. And if you want to call yourself a master, I don't want to say you've never made, like you don't ever consider yourself ever making it, because if that makes sense.
I think master is like a word. It's funny. I was trying to figure out just then why it doesn't resonate with me. I'm like, I love the word master in the sense of like becoming a master of something, like as a like an adjective, almost like describing being the best at something. But like the term doesn't sit right. And I think because that symbolizes that it's like you're at completion, or it's like an outcome driven thing, like, okay, I'm done, versus like,
versus the progression
of becoming that, or like that. I think it's the mindset of what that means, possibly, of like the mindset of always wanting to look for the next thing or do the next thing. And I think this is also another thing that we're learning, is it's not just about go, but it's also stopping and going, okay, I've had this amazing life, or I've experienced this amazing thing. Like, how can I celebrate that right now too? Because I think sometimes like when you get, and we've been fortunate now with a lot of events that we've attended, that you get around a lot of people that are doing really, really amazing things. And it's like, how long have they actually celebrated those moments? It's like, okay, I've done that, next. And
it's like a lot of them aren't happy, or they're not fulfilled. And that's because there's so many areas of life that need to be I guess, tended to reach fulfillment. And if you're only fulfilling achievement, but you have no like spiritual practice, or you have no relationship and you have nobody to share that with. I know that's something that's hit really close to home for me, is that everything that's happening now, I've got a team to celebrate that with, and I get to celebrate their wins as well. And for me, it's like that side of love, growth, and contribution that is incredible. But when we're in hustle mode, you know, and we can be particularly driven about money or whatever it is in the earlier stages of life, it's like you can get so lost in that. And then people get to the midlife crises or whatever, and it's like, oh, why aren't I happy? It's like, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. And I think money's one of those ones that it's such an easy one to pick up on, isn't it? Because it's like an obvious thing of what most people strive to, but it can go in any area, really. And it's like you think, well, we've kind of learned and been studying around it being in 3 spheres, like self, work, and relationships. And it's like quite often most people aren't balanced amongst the 3. If you're an achiever, you're probably very heavy in work, you know. And it's like, well, how are you tending to, like Lauren said, how are you fulfilling relationships? How are you fulfilling self as well? Like, are you actually taking time for self-care? Are you nurturing the people around you? This doesn't mean intimate relationships, but just friendships, family members,
how you talk to the people in your street, like who are your neighbors, you know what I mean? Not your literal neighbors, but like, how do you treat the garbage man or the busman or the person at the grocery store? Like, are you shaping up in the house as you're shaping up out there in the world? And
it comes back to that consistency, doesn't it? Are you congruent at work with how you are at home, with how you are in your relationships? And most of the time people aren't, or they're bringing back the same mentality in work to their relationships or to their personal lives, and vice versa. And so I think it's that thing of like noticing or being aware of like how, like where you sit within that, like how much time are you putting into each area, and how can you balance it out? Because ultimately, like, you want, when you eventually pass away or you reach that end, whatever that end is, you want to know that you've actually, it's not about how many things you've ticked off necessarily. It's like who you were as a person. Like, yes, what you've achieved, the accomplishments that you've had, but who have you experienced it with? Like, I know some of the people that I've got to meet and chat to, like, that have done some really amazing things, they said very similar stuff of like, I've got, you know, I had an awesome job, I'm earning this much money and got to travel the world, and you know, all the things that typically people would go, fuck yeah, like this is amazing. This is when I'm a kid, this is what I'm writing down that I want to have. But then it's like, and I realized that like it's not fulfilling when there's no one to share it with. And that doesn't mean intimate relationships, but if you haven't actually worked on the relationships or worked on like why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, then it's like you're going to have all these things come in and go, oh, well, why am I not fulfilled with this? Like, why am I not actually feeling the way that I thought I would feel when I was 5 or 6 and I wrote down that I wanted X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's something for us that we're really cognizant of, like documenting this process of like documenting the progress of us doing things and achieving things and going through it, because I think it's very rare to see a lot of people like actually documenting this stuff. It's just that, oh, well, I got the car, join my course to see how I got there. It's like, what?
Right. Like, and these are the sorts of videos that like our mentors and our teachers do. Like, it's just them in their house or them walking their dog. And I actually wanted to come back to the point of when you're talking about balancing the spheres, and it's not about having them balanced at all points, because we actually have to acknowledge when there is a time more for putting more time into self, putting more time into relationship, putting more time into work. But being aware of that, of like, I'm in a really work orientated mood at the moment. I know that I need to work on relationship at this time, or I need to work on self at this time. So it's not that they're all sitting in harmony all at once, because usually that doesn't actually allow you to focus in and hone in on the mastery or whatever it is on that sphere.
And I think that depends on the goal, doesn't it? Like, totally. If your goal is like, I want to get a promotion at work, or I want to like score this job where I'm traveling all the time. It's like, well, then work needs to sit a bit bigger.
Correct.
Versus if it's like, well, why am I going to work? It's so I can, build this awesome, vibe at work, this awesome company culture where like we all get to have coffees every day or like go to the park every day. It's like, well, how can you start to nurture those relationships as well? So maybe you need to bring that sphere a bit bigger. And I think from what you're saying, it just kind of hones in on the fact of you just need to get clear on why you're doing what you're doing. What are you doing it for? Yep. Why are you doing it? Because chances are you're not wanting that big house just to show it off to people. Like there's a reason there, whether it's like for freedom or for like to I don't know, to be closer to where your friends live, or to there's going to be a lot of other reasons that you're doing it. And so when you know that, then it's like, how can I start already being that person or practicing those skills now, so that when I have this material thing, or when I've reached this goal, it's not like I'm getting there and then I'm going, oh, why doesn't it feel
nobody's
as fun?
Here?
Yeah, nobody's here. Well, that's weird, because
I haven't spoken to anyone in the last 5 years.
I just so hustle. I lived in a cave for 10 years. Well, guess that explains that.
But in all honesty, to give a real life example of this, what just came to mind, girl, was really cool, because this morning, if I'm to speak correctly to what your spheres of influence are as well, from memory when we were back there, your sphere of self was very small. So that was something that you were wanting to work on, giving more time to you. And for me, relationships were something that I wanted to work on, because it was something that, I wanted like an intimate relationship, but also working on the like relationship with my sister and my family and my friends and all of that stuff. And so I wanted to, and I have been putting more time into it. And this morning was a really cool example that we both did an activity together where we got up and we said, hey, do you want to do like our breath work and visualization this morning together? That's meeting my need of relationship, and that's meeting her need of self. And I just think it was like a really cool way of kind of explaining
and relationship
this.
Too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And self for me. But I think for me, it felt more of a bonding thing, because it's like I'm so driven to do my practices by myself. But what I'm getting so much enjoyment out of at the moment is the connection that I have with my girl, and then also like the connection that the four of us all have with like Tom and Josh, and when we all hustle together. And I'm noticing how much that is building my relationship when I go to work and when I'm talking to people, and it feels so expansive. And it's like finally stepping out of this place of it's all just for me, or I have to do it all myself, is really incredible. And I'd love to hear what your perspective is of giving more time to yourself to do practices like these, or your little self-care things of like reading the animal cards, and like how that actually helps you shape up in your work and your relationships too.
Yeah, I think it's that thing of like, for me, it's always been easier to do things for other people sometimes than what it is to do things for you. And that's not even like something like, oh, woe is me. It's just, it's a way of like human nature. It's not just me. Everyone else would be the same too. It is easier to do more for someone else, whether it be a kid, an animal, a loved one, a friend, than it is to do for yourself. And sometimes it's like, again, if you're not clear on why you're doing something or what you're doing it for, of course, then when it comes to practices or that self-care, it's like, oh, well, I've just got to keep doing this, or I've just got to, and already there you can hear the language is so different to like, I get to do this, and I want to do this, and I'm choosing to do this. And so for me, I think it was just being in a completely different space. It's like I made the commitment to start a business. And so I guess in my brain, I thought that everything had to go into that to make it work. Like you were saying,
it's that sphere that needed the energy.
It needed the energy. But then it's like you see with a lot of people that are starting businesses or that are working in really, busy or high energy sort of workspaces, it's like then self very quickly gets run down. And I never felt really run down with what I'm doing, because it was an active choice to do it. It's just more that I was neglecting things or not really seeing, I won't even say seeing the benefit, because I knew it's something that I wanted to do. And and love doing, because I could see it in you and Josh doing that too, of having daily practices and daily routines. I think for me, it was the consistency.
I was just gonna say, I was like, I'll see if she gets to it, but that's definitely where it's.
And I know, because I know myself a lot more, and because I've done a lot of work on myself, it actually makes sense, because I really value variety.
Right.
What for somehow in my brain, I thought that to have a routine, it's got to be the exact same thing every day. And so I was self-sabotaging myself of going like, okay, well, immediately that thought makes me go, ooh, never doing it, or I'll do it once and I'll do it for a little bit, and then I'll instantly kind of move back into something else. And then I'd trick my brain into thinking, well, not being consistent now, if that makes sense. And so now more so it's like having that group environment or everyone doing things. It is great because it does hold you accountable, like having accountability partners, but then also understanding why you're doing it, getting really clear on like, hey, look, this is the benefit. And like you were saying before, it's like you notice that, you know, doing those practices for you, but then also doing joint practices or catching up together actually made you better in other relationships too, or made you think differently around different people. It's that side of it as well, that when you actually start putting the work in, I guess, and I don't like saying that, but you start being consistent in a practice, or you start working on those spheres, whatever they are and whatever time, you will see it ripple into other areas, because work is never just work. Who you are at work is probably who you're going to be in relationships and who you're going to be when you're by yourself. So if you're burnt out, you know, in work and you're not giving time to the relationships there, chances are that, you know, the other relationships in your life are probably not going to be getting nurtured as well. Versus if you're putting in the work at the start of the day or whenever it is for you on yourself, then it's almost like your cup is full to then be able to go, cool, now when I go to work or when I go, you know, I do my visualization with Lauren or whatever it is, it's like, cool, I've taken that time to like work and check in with where I'm at first before I'm just giving to someone else or sharing with someone else.
Definitely. And we might do a follow-up video on this girl around the 6 needs, the 6 human needs, because I think this
maybe
is
with the guys as well.
Yeah, we might just pop on with a video with the guys, because they're different to us, but they're also the same in a lot of areas, which is really cool. And they're all up on the lingo of, you know, the 6 human needs. If you're not familiar with them, we won't cover it here because it'll just get me going into a bigger topic than we planned for this episode. But essentially what Sarah was talking about before, like meeting that need of variety, which is both a high need of both of ours, whereas the boys are probably more in the certainty zone, which is like the opposite need. So like having a consistent practice, they're cool with that, like they can really stick with it. But I feel like I love discipline and I love consistency, but having a consistent time that I practice versus like a specific thing that I have to sit in every day of like, that puts me off.
See, that's interesting, because it's like for me, and I love that, because it's like the consistency more comes through the scheduling rather than the practice itself.
Right.
For me, it's like, it's not the time as much. It's like, although I do like doing something in the morning, it's how I do it that kind of mixes it up. So and also putting a few things together. So whether it's listening to a meditation when I'm walking the dogs, or like when I'm doing the ice bath, working on my breath work, or like mixing a few things together and going, how can I, and again, I still feel like I'm in trial phase of like doing a few different things and seeing what's working. I think I would really recommend that too. If you're new to finding what works for you, don't kind of get caught up in, all right, well, that was crap, I'm not doing that again, that was boring. It's like, chances are you probably haven't found what lights you up or what motivates you, which is kind of like the point of this chat. Find what motivates you. If you're someone that loves art, it's like, how can your meditation be doing a quick sketch in the morning, or you know, writing something out on a whiteboard? Or if you love music, how can you incorporate music into your meditation? It doesn't need to be this still thing. Like I know for me, when I do my visualization or my meditation, I do put on tracks in the morning or at night time when I'm doing it before bed. I'll play music or I'll play a guided meditation, not because I need it, but because that's how I like to get into that space. And that might progress and change, but I think it's cool to not get focused on like, oh, well, this person says it's going to be this way, or this isn't working, so I'm never going to do it. Like,
right,
chopping and changing and see what's working for you.
And it's such a cool point, because it's something that I've learned in terms of being in relationship or being closer to relationship. And while I might have training in certain areas or techniques to use, it certainly shows me how bringing play, compassion, and love into practice at all time, regardless of how I'm feeling, it brings a different element of grace and beauty into it, of like, I'm not feeling great today, which makes me need to turn up even more in that moment with even more compassion, even more love. What can I put my focus and energy towards? And it's like, yeah, and for me, that would probably more sit in, okay, I'm feeling like I need community today, versus sitting alone. Like, I can sit alone and do that, but you know, to really feel that connection and go, what is something that I'm challenged by or struggle with? And it's like, I'm feeling like I can't talk today. I'm feeling like low on connection. So if I just sit around the dogs, or if I sit with Sarah and Josh or Tom, that for me is like huge. And it might not just be sitting there doing my meditation. It could be chatting to someone that I love, going for a walk on the beach.
Yeah.
Going for a road trip. I know we both love movement. And
one thing that jogged my mind as you were speaking as well, of like, is the idea of like journaling or practicing even when things are going good. I think sometimes when like things aren't going great or you're not feeling your best, it's so easy to go, oh, well, I definitely need to be, you know, I missed my meditation, or I missed this, or I missed that. Oh, and then you kind of beat yourself down. Whereas one thing that I've really been playing with the idea of and thinking a lot more about is like actually journaling the things that are going really great.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, dear diary, like this person sucked today and like hate my life, and you know, this person screwed me over. It's like, wow, what are 3 things I can be grateful for today? What are 3 moments that actually, you know, in the hindsight, oh, not in the hindsight, in the moment are really challenging, but I know that was serving a greater purpose or helping me learn something. Like,
for like that crappy moment, you could go write down that crappy moment, voice whatever you want in it, but then go, wow, I'm so grateful I had the perspective to go, I don't need to react to this, you know. And it's like, so it's like, meet yourself where you're at, which is something that we always talk about. Thank you, John. Is it John?
No, Jem.
Yeah, my eyesight's going and my hearing.
So we don't have our eyes or ears, but hey.
Whoa.
I think the journaling when things are going good, like just coming back to that quickly, is so interesting, because what ends up happening is that when you have those days that are like, you know, and we do have those days, like when people go, it's just a choice, snap out of it. It's like, sometimes there are moments where you actually need to sit in that, I believe. Like, you need to sit in that, not pain, but you need to sit in that mood to actually notice what's happening in my body. Where am I feeling that?
Acknowledge.
But at the same time, you've got your journal, you've got your art, you've got your music, whatever it is for you that you can look back on and go like, this is what I wrote about. This is what changed my mood last week. And it was like, sitting in a bath, or like,
called mum, or whatever it was.
So called mum, or like wrote a letter, or like played fetch with the dogs, or like blasted heavy metal, like, you know, and screamed for 10 hours, like whatever it is. They're things that you kind of lose sight of, I think, when you're feeling low. Then it's sort of like misery loves company, right? You start looking for people or experiences that match that state that you're in, versus when you're feeling great and motivated, typically you just get on that thing and you don't even think about documenting it or logging it. You're just like, I'm just in it, and you know, you're on to the next thing, which kind of comes back to how we started it, is like, when you're in that achiever mindset, which is really great, I think that where people get caught up is that they're always on to the next. They're never like stopping and celebrating and embracing, like, wow, like life is amazing. Like, this moment is really amazing. How can I capture this somehow? Even if it's, I know Lauren and I, when we were living apart, we always would do like voice notes to each other, and that was
that
kind
was
of like
our love language. And
and it was just our way to like also capture and document in the moment, like just did this, or just spoke to this person, or bumped into this person at a cafe. And that for us was like
the little things. Like again, it doesn't have to be momentous, it doesn't have to be, you know, your story doesn't have to be the big trauma, it doesn't have to be this like, oh, I reached the summit and I'm here. It's like actually the little things in the day, like, oh my God, I just chatted to this person, randomly ran into them. Or like the voice message Sarah left yesterday was like, oh, I was sitting in my visualization, this number came to me, then I picked the animal card and it was the elephant, which is what I was feeling drawn to all day. And so it's like finding the way that you interact with people. And again, like, so what I was thinking before is like attracts like. And I always think in terms of when I've written a lot of songs is when I've been motivated by a negative stimulus. And so it's like, how can I actually switch that to when things are going good? How can I write about the good things? Because it's so easy to dwell on when you're feeling crappy. You're like, oh, I'm going to put on this tune that's going to speak to my pain and know exactly where I'm at. But it's like, you can do that and you can actually raise the vibes when you're feeling good too. It's like, oh, when I was feeling good, I put on the Fearless Motivation instrumentals, or I went out for a run, or I did something that pumped me up. So when you're feeling like you're dropping into these like little pits, and this happens at different times of the month for me, like when the moon's changing and when our hormones are changing,
the weather's changing,
the weather, the seasons, all of that, you can look back and go, what was I doing? I was writing every day. Am I doing that? No. Okay, crap, I'm going to start tonight. So like,
and I think what gets people is that it seems so basic. And I know for me and my logical part of my brain, I'm like, I know what I do to shape my mood. Like, why do I need to write this down? But literally in my phone, I created a note, like kind of in the notepad, I created a list ages ago of like things that make me happy. And it seems so basic, cool. But it's like, or things that change my mood. And it was like a hot shower, like, and you know, going to the ocean, taking the dogs out, like being with my family, like doing a gratitude practice, you know, and you just write all of those things down. And it's like, even if you never look at it, it's like, you know, that I think sometimes knowing you've got that, it's almost like knowing you've got a safety net, or knowing you've got something there to draw on if you ever need it. And it's sort of like that quote that I always love of like practicing the skill before you need it. Like, as opposed to waiting until you're feeling yuck and going, because you're not going to be in a productive mindset to go, yeah, let's shake this off now, versus when you're in a great mood.
You told me to do that at some point. I had it on the back of my door when I was living in Ulverston in Tassie, and every time I'd have to open my door and it was there. And I think it makes me just want to put it on the mirror, because I've got all my posters and stuff on my bathroom mirror at the moment. So when I'm brushing my teeth, when I'm putting on my face, like my face moisturizes and whatnot, it's like
she's just putting a mask on.
Yeah, I'm just putting on my face. Like normally I'm just skin and bones. It's really pretty. I'm really like Schmeagol.
She's not actually here in real life.
Surprise! Just like peels face off. It's like no. So like that actually makes me want to step into action after here. Write a list of like literally everything that like gets me in state, or gets me in beautiful peak state, which is what we kind of call it, or whatever gets you in that high on life. And if you can't think of that right now, like go back to a time where you remember like falling on the ground laughing, or just smiling, or feeling that sensation of like,
even if it's like looking up a cat video, or looking up a video, or looking at this person's memes, like it doesn't need to be these philosophical things.
Like driving to my favorite cafe that's 3 hours away, and it seems irrational, but I love it. It's like, do it. If you have the weekend and you've got no other plans, go for it. Don't plan for somebody else to be picking you up. Pick yourself up, and people will raise to that. And you'll come across somebody at that cafe that you'll go, that's why I'm here. Yes. Or
I feel like there's so many moments that you get those, like, it's almost like that divine timing, almost without going too spiritual, but it's like something does kick into place when you take action. Like you have a thought of like, oh, I'm not feeling good. Really don't want to do it. And you're almost trying to convince yourself that you're having a shit day, and you're like,
right.
And you want to stay in it. Like, you know, those moods where you're like, I actually don't want to feel good. I just want to, you know, if you're having a fight or an argument with someone, then you're like, I'm just going to go to a cafe. I'm going to go do this. And then you go do it. and then someone makes you laugh or something silly happens, you're like, oh, and now I like instantly feel better. Or maybe you listen to something on like a podcast and they chat about that particular thing and you're like, what? I feel like that was for me, like that was my message. I know it's not, but I feel, or maybe it is. And
I think that's songs for me when they come through. I'm like, okay, I think you wrote this exactly for me. And I'm sure you guys are exactly the same. It's like you hear a song and how it just captivates the words written in a certain way with like the theme of the music. And you're like, God damn, like that is my story. And you think if they're writing that, you are not the only one. So it's like, I almost want to emphasize, like, get out of your head that you're the only one going through whatever you're going through. And again, it's not like to say, oh, just get up and keep going, but to step out of self is when we start to it's when we start to open our hearts in a bigger way and open our minds, because we're not so thinking, oh, how am I losing from this? Or even
and to follow on from that, it's like when you are feeling those, you know, thoughts of like whatever it is, just those thoughts that aren't serving you in any moment, it is because you're focusing on yourself.
Right.
It's always because you're focusing on yourself, and not in a like, oh, I'm so amazing way, but it's like you are not thinking of somebody else, that you're not thinking of someone else on the road or someone else that you live with or someone else that you messaged a couple of weeks ago. Like it's always because you're focused on like I'm not doing this, or like my day's been shit, or I didn't get this thing done right. It's always I in those moments, which is what you were talking about. And it's like, I guess on the flip side of that too, it's also like just as much as, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but just as much on when you're focusing on yourself, taking the focus off yourself, you can draw yourself to, I guess, mood changing states or changing how you feel about a certain situation. It goes hand in hand with like when you're around people that are positive, or when you're around people that lift you up, or maybe popping this live on, or maybe it's like, you know, popping on a podcast of someone that you love listening to, or just calling your mum or calling your sister, calling your brother. If that helps to change the mood too, do that. Because it's like, if you're around people that bring you down, it's going to make you worse. Putting stuff on that lifts you up is going to instantly lift you up as well. So it's all about where focus flows, or where focus goes, energy flows.
And the window of opportunity, to wrap it all up, it's like that window of opportunity where you're like, oh yeah, I could do this, but do it. Like as Gary Vee would say, more of that stuff, that in that impulse of like, oh, this would be good. Cook yourself a good meal. Go and talk to someone who gives you good vibes. If you don't know anybody, find somebody, or start talking to yourself. Start writing things down in a journal of like, create characters that you want to see happen in your life. And I can almost guarantee you that you will have people shaping up around you to meet those characters of manifestation. Like we're huge on intention setting and manifesting, and like putting the thought to where we want to go before it's even happened. And that already in our head is like, it's happened, and so it is.
Exactly. And I think I would even challenge that if you're having a day that's a little bit rough, like how can you document that for yourself so that you can actually look at later, maybe not in the moment, how can you look at later, like, wow, look, like, and it's not about judging yourself, but just for your own study, I guess, and for your own learnings moving forward. It's like, well, look at what I was saying as part of my day that day. I hung around that particular person, or like I can see that I'm clearly, I haven't taken care of myself. Like I'm sitting slumped over. I look miserable. I'm not, you know, listen to my language here. I'm not actually speaking like I'm certain or I'm confident, whatever it is. So it's not about doing it to pick on yourself, but I'm always a big fan. I love doing that with the work that I do, is filming things so I can look back on it with like that objective sort of eye and go, wow, like I thought I was holding my body up straight there, but I was actually slumped. And those things do matter, like how you hold your body and how you're talking, how you don't need to sound amazing all the time, but if you'll notice, I'm sure, when you're not in the best state of mind and when you are in the best state of mind, there's going to be differences in how you hold your body, how you speak, who you're around, what experiences you've had in the day. starting to log those in a video form or a journal form maybe. And that way, when you're out of that moment, you'll get a really clear indicator of, look, this is actually what I need to be moving towards or moving away from.
So with that, we might call it a wrap up. I love talking to my girl, but we're going to keep hustling as it is. This is a chance to speak with you, to speak with each other, to share with you guys where and what and why we do what we do. I feel like ever since I've moved in here that I haven't had near the chance of dips that I've had in my mood, purely because of proximity is power and who holds us accountable and who we surround ourselves by, like what standards they have and what qualities they have. So let's pose a little question for them to comment with, if they make it all the way to the end of this episode or this video, just to share
a motivation maybe.
Yeah,
I think maybe bringing it back to like, what if you could pick like 1 to 2 things, like what are 1 to 2 things that motivate you to be a better person, or that motivate you to get through those challenging days. Because in sharing this, in sharing something that, and I don't want to put that focus on having a negative day per se, but I just want to encourage that, because in sharing something that might motivate you, you might actually give inspiration to somebody else. It's like, oh, I didn't even think of that, or I forgot that,
that I liked this.
Exactly. And I know we've got that luxury of being around each other, and one of us will say, let's do this. I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure. And then we do it and we're like, oh, I love that. Yeah. So maybe sharing 1 to 2 things that motivate you, and it doesn't need to be this profound thing, but I would encourage, if you've watched this the whole way through, share 1 to 2 things that motivate you on an off day or a day that, is maybe a little bit more challenging, and see what comes back. See if there's any return from that in your day moving forward. What about you? Do you have any things that you would like to add on to that?
I love that question. And just for people, if you're struggling with an example, for me, when I'm feeling in a dipped kind of mood, and it might not be that I'm sad or anything, just feeling low on energy, it's like Sarah said, my thing is writing. So I love to write, like go into poetry, or movement can help with me, because when I'm feeling in that mood, it's very easy to stay stagnant. So it's like, is it a gentle walk on the beach? Is it a bike ride? Is it time by myself or with people? Often I do like to go into that introspective space first before I kind of share too much. So I'm just like, okay, like this is where I'm coming from today, versus trying to gain somebody else's perspective of what's happening in my life. It's like, understand me first, and then I come back to like, okay, like might not be vibing or high energy, but it's like, wow, I've actually taken the time to document and go, wow, I was feeling low on energy today. That's interesting. And I tend to look into things like astrology and the moon, and even like what I've eaten or what conversations I've had. So it's kind of like going over that content and like, oh, that makes sense now. So it's not so like mysterious. These moods aren't so mysterious. Like we're cyclical beings, right? And if we actually map down everything that was happening, it'd be like it's literally so obvious how I'm probably going to be feeling at certain times. And we can get curveballs that come in, but
I love those though, girl. I think they sum up who you are, and it comes back to your love language of like loving writing and words and all of that too. And so it's like, doing this, you'll actually realize, I think, more about who you are, even though you probably already, of course, think that you have an idea about yourself and what you enjoy. When you do these processes, and when you take the time to actually stop and go like, what did motivate me today? Or what, if I had the day where maybe I'm a little bit low on energy, or hormones are a little bit all over the place, what changed that? Was it food? Was it a road trip? Was it, I know for me, it tends to be a lot of movement, like I said. So if I get out and train the dogs, or I walk with the dogs, or I hop in the car and I put music on, they are clear ones for me that instantly shake my mood, and not only shake my mood, but make me want to go back home and be like, I just want to do everything. So I'd love to hear, if you guys are watching, like, what are those 1 to 2 things for you that motivate you? And share it for yourself, but also with the intention that this could also help or
could add value.
Yeah,
really.
add value to somebody else. So we might leave it there.
We will.
We may potentially pop back on later today or tomorrow. I know you have work again tomorrow, but we might pop on later today and check back in around lunchtime or something and see.
Yeah, we'll see what exactly, and we can like we said, we'll do a follow-up of things to come, like the 6 human needs, and then there's so many more episodes to come together. I feel like there's a build-up of, I love chatting to you, and I feel like different things come out when we share that time together, and it's like that intuitive flow. So anyway, with that, our conversations are going to resume. We could honestly leave this live. We're not leaving this live. We're
just watch us chat, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
For 3 hours straight.
We find ourselves entertaining, but it'll probably chew our battery up. Let's be real. Thank you. Oh my gosh, the battery sign just came up. That's so funny. All right, take care, legends. We really, really appreciate those of you who came on live, and for those of you who will watch the replay. So take care.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining.
With Oceans of Love and Light, we've got Sarah and Loch.